I'd like to call to order the regular town commission meeting of June 28th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tomczak,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Okay, we have no proclamations or presentations. We have one public comment form for a non-agenda item. That's Weir King. Please come on forward.
I had just had a comment. My name's Weir. There used to be benches on the bridges on either side of our town here. They were removed about recently, it's 1 month ago. And I wasn't sure if that was under your jurisdiction or the Florida Department of Transportation, but I just didn't have a point of contact to figure out how that happened. So I know there's a lot of people that used to, jog on the bridge, and they would use those benches that were on the bridge, and now it just kind of looks ugly. They're no longer there. So that's something fairly important to me. A couple other people, y'all can look into that. If you have a better contact, if that's the Florida Department of Transportation, see if they can do better. If that's something you all can handle, I would appreciate that. Bringing those benches back at some point would be nice.
Thanks for letting us know.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield. Yes. Mayor Tomczak.
Yes. Next item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, or do we want to pull any item off for further review?
Motion made?
So moved. Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo. Aye. Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield. Yes. Mayor Tomczak,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to public hearing section, ordinance, the second reading of ordinance number 440. Before we read the ordinance into the record, Bonnie Landry is here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead and make your presentation, then we'll read the ordinance into the record.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Bonnie Landry, Bonnie C. Landry and Associates. I'm joined with Heather Shaw, my associate, and we're providing you the summary of the Town of Sewalls Point Comprehensive Plan, and this is the adoption hearing, which is the second and final reading of that ordinance. So as an overview, we're going to give you a review, and those members of the audience, a review of what the requirements are for a comprehensive plan. We're going to talk about what accomplishments the town has made to date, an updated timeline of the adoption process. We're going to talk about the objections, recommendations, and comments report, which is a report from the state. We're going to talk about some other matters related to the comp plan, the adoption process, and then, of course, since it's a public hearing, we'll take comments from the commission and comments from the public, and then we will ask for any changes and a motion to approve. So, as a reminder, the purpose of a comp plan is just to provide the principles, guidelines, standards, and strategies for orderly and balanced development of an area, and it needs to reflect the community commitments and community desires. It is required according to state law, Florida State Statute 163. And accomplishments. Phase one, this began as long ago as March 2021 because we did this over 2 fiscal years. And we began the process with public workshops and looking at previous workshops that we had had with the commission. We took that into consideration. We also surveyed residents. The next step that we did was we did the data inventory and analysis, and that is prescribed by state law, what kind of data you need to collect, and then you need to analyze it and then have that reflected in your comprehensive plan. That was in fiscal year 2021. And in July 2021, we were fortunate to be awarded a grant up for $50,000 from the state to support the cost of the plan and offset the cost. Then we had phase 2. Phase 2 was in fiscal year 2022. That is when we developed what I would say the meat of the comprehensive plan, the thing that most people look at, the goals, objectives, and policies, and of course the required maps. In December, we had the LPA workshop for that first reading, and then we had a workshop leading up to the first reading. The first reading was in January, and that was with the LPA and with the commission. There were some comments made that were incorporated into that version that was transmitted to the state. The next step is the state reviews it over a period of about 60 days. They also send it to all the agencies that review the comprehensive plan, South Florida Water Management District, Treasure Coast Regional Planning. The list goes on and on. But that is distributed through various state departments, and they can have their input. And then there's a letter that is put together by the state called the ORF report. We received that report April 1st, and we updated the plan as needed. And then we took the updated plan and we had a public workshop May 24th, 2022. As you can see, we're at the end. We are at the finish line of this project. Today's the 28th. It is the adoption hearing. It's only required to go to the commission, not to the LPA for the second reading. Once the completion is done tonight, my firm will package the document and send all the copies to all the agencies as required. And then we will go through the adoption process. The state gets one final look at it, and we anticipate that it will be in effect toward the end of August 2022. So as a reminder, the ORF report, there's objections, recommendations, and comments. Objections are the only thing that must be addressed. If you don't address them, you will not get an adopted comprehensive plan. We only had one of those, and the objection was that we did not have a level of service for solid waste. We did provide one, and that level of service was recommended in pretty much the same as Martin County has because they're our provider. So we did that consistent with what the county level of service is. And then the comments are just kind of suggestions how to make your comp plan stronger. We did take some of those comments because we thought they were good ideas. So one of the changes we made is all the level of services throughout for transportation and other elements, we consolidated them and put them into the capital improvements element because that's the best practice to do that. There was the date of the coastal high hazard area map that had to be updated because we used the date the information was pulled, but it really, the most updated was like 2016. So we had to change the date on that. And then we had to put a policy in there that we would develop a water supply plan. We talked about that at the workshop. It is just a state required document. Other notable matters. One big process that we did in collaboration with your legal department is we refined density to define it as net, not gross density. And that was needed so that we were very clear that when you do your density calculations, you don't include roadways, open space, and parks. It's just the individual lots that you're calculating that density on. Some other matters that as a follow-up, there will be some changes that we've seen that need to be done to the land development regulations. We've spoken to legal about some of the ideas of some of the language that needs to change. Some of which, just to clarify language about accessory dwelling units, the estate zoning, which we talked about at the workshop, whether or not you have to do a zoning change to have an accessory dwelling, and some of the subdivision regulations need to be cleaned up, but it's minor housekeeping items. We do have to develop a water supply plan, and we also need to get an interlocal agreement with Martin County because they are our water and wastewater service provider. And in the process of the comp plan, we identified that we don't have an up-to-date interlocal agreement. And that agreement will protect the town because you really need to be protected that you're going to have ongoing service for water and sewer. So just to give you an overview about the adoption process, we had our workshop in May. We're at the hearing right now. We send the package to the state on or about July 1st. We have to put together binders and send it to the state. Once the state receives it, they have about 45 days just to do a final look to make sure we address the one objection that we had. And then after that time, they post on their website that it is complete, which means that it's definitely in effect. And that, we believe, will be the end of August. So my recommendation to y'all today is to follow the hearing process, which means you have commissioner comments and you open it up for public comments for the public hearing. And after that, we would look for a motion to adopt the ear-based amendments to the Town of Sewalls Point Comprehensive Plan. That concludes my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Bonnie. Commissioner Fender, can we go ahead and read the title of the ordinance into the record, and then we'll go through the comments? Would you please read the title of the ordinance into the record, please?
Ordinance number 440, an ordinance of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, amending the text of the comprehensive plan in accordance with the evaluation and appraisal review-based amendments, providing findings, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, providing for applicability, providing for filing with the Florida Department of State, providing for filing with the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, providing for an effective date, and providing for adoption.
Thank you. Is there any, do we have any public comments? I have no sheets. Is there any public comments on the comprehensive plan? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the discussion among the commissioners. Commissioner Fender?
Thanks for all this hard work, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Just a real quick question. Let's pretend all this has gone through. It's approved, it's done, it's on the shelf. What is our process? Is there a process, and what is it for modifying this? If we,
The process is similar to what any ear-based amendment is. You still have to go through and do a markup. You have to do a first and second reading. So you can do either a commission-initiated comprehensive plan amendment, or someone from the public could suggest a comprehensive plan amendment.
and that change, you said amendment. I mean, is it just a edited change to the document, or is it an actual new chapter or something?
Any change to the, right, like let's say, for example, you wanted to change the density.
Yeah.
That would be a big issue. But if you wanted to change any of the policies, you would follow a similar process where you have a first and second reading. The first reading goes to the state, they make their comments, and the agency make the comment, and then we make those changes and send it back. It's a very similar process, because what you did was an amendment, even though it was a strike through of the whole document, it was still considered an amendment.
All right. Thank you.
I have a couple of very quick questions. The interlocal agreement that we're talking about with Martin County, do we have any deadline for when that has to be completed by, or, because that could probably pretty easily fall through the cracks. How do we make sure that it doesn't fall through the
I
cracks?
think that's on our list that Dan and I've been talking about as follow-up, so it's definitely on our list.
Yes, I've asked Ms. Landry to provide a scope of services which would describe the work and the cost proposal, and then we would bring that to the commission for your consideration.
Okay. One of the other things is that when we started this effort, we realized that we hadn't updated the comprehensive plan in many years. And I'm wondering, how do we keep track of any modifications or changes to the 163 section?
So.
I assume they churn out revisions to that pretty regularly.
Yes, and you're required, you're supposed to, I mean, now you're on track, every 7 years to do a review and find out if there are changes that need to be made. That's what the ear-based amendment process is for. But for the in the next 7 years, you're not going to have 437 changes to state law, because it's going to be only over a 7-year period. So typically what a planner like myself would do is find out what changes have been made since the adoption, so between now and 7 years from now, create a list, create a matrix, and say, well, you're making these changes based on each statute, and we just make a matrix just like I made for the comments, but this would be changes to state law. And that is best practice, and it is required every 7 years.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, hi Bonnie, thank you for your work. Can you talk about the ADUs? Because I know that there was an issue that Chuck had with units that were on one property that might be called a mother-in-law type units, and wanted to make sure that, Chuck, you had some input into this process. I know that you met with Bonnie, but that you're familiar with what's going on for the ADUs.
Yeah.
So that's really my only question.
So we added some definitions to clarify what is an accessory dwelling unit, and it is a detached, it's not just an addition to your home, it's definitely a separate building. And that was the biggest change that was made. And we also, even though it was already in your land development regulations, we added a policy in the comp plan to say that you can only have one accessory dwelling unit per single family home. So you could not have a house with 3 accessory dwelling units per the comp plan, 1 per house. You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other comments from the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 440.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry. You did ask for public comment. I'm just making sure. We did.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second?
I will second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield? Yes. Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we don't have any first reading of any ordinances. We have no resolutions, so we'll move on to old business. First item is debris monitoring services, CapTech. Mr. Hudson, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, this is a bit of an unusual item. You may have noticed that in recent times, or at least recent meetings, we've been going through and making sure the disaster agreements are up to date. And so in the course of doing that, we have discovered that the town entered a contract with CapTech Engineering Incorporated December 9th of 2019, and the CapTech signed it, but for reasons unknown to us, it was never executed by the town. And so we're asking that the commission approve the mayor to sign the contract and to retroactively date it to December 9th, 2019, and that's with the advice of council.
Is that correct? Would you go on record?
That's correct. I mean, I think this is mainly an administrative correction. The contract is nevertheless, I believe, enforceable, but signing it would complete the process for the formalities.
And it was approved at the meeting, it just wasn't signed, right?
Yes, we included some of the minutes from that meeting to reflect the approval.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield? Yes. Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Okay, next item is new business, the town FEMA attorney agreement. Mr. Hudson, would you please?
Yeah, same introductory comment. We're updating a lot of our disaster-related items, and so we do use from time to time a firm in Orlando, Baker Donaldson. They are coordinated through Torsivia Law Firm, of course. So we need to bring that agreement up to date, and so it's before you tonight to approve the agreement.
I feel sorry for anybody who has to deal with FEMA, so as long as it's not us, I guess.
I do too.
Well,
Any
could I,
discussion?
just ask the hourly rates, were they the same with the former contract?
Sorry, I do not know the answer to that.
Joe, do you have any idea? Right. So maybe you can notify us after the fact.
I'll look into it and tell you.
I know it's a specialized field and those rates are high, but that's what lawyers are doing these days.
I'll make a motion to move it.
Good question.
Sure. I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Kyle,
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Okay, that brings us to discussion item on the South River Road drainage issues. Since this is kind of a discussion, why don't you go ahead, Mr. Hudson, and get us rolling on this? I don't know if you wanted to start it and have,
Yeah,
we'll do some talking afterwards, or?
Yeah, I think the sequence maybe should be, I will introduce it. We have two people that are affected by drainage issues on South River Road in the vicinity of Mandalay. And so they've asked to speak to address the commission, and so we'll first hear from the Michelot property, and then after that, we'll hear from the Gilbert property, and then perhaps after that, we'll bring Mr. Kaptek to bring the town engineer's perspective. I know that the town is familiar with the problem generally. There was an application for a grant last year that was sought to fund some improvements, but that was not successful, the grant. So with that, I would invite Mr. Flaw, and I'm sorry, I forget your name, so. Okay.
Yeah, we got the two public comments, Katia and then Dorian Gilbert second. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and town staff. My name is Katia Lysak. I'm here this evening representing the household of 9 Mandalay Road. My partner, Andrew Michelov, regrets that he can't be here today. He is traveling, so he's on a flight actually right now. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the problem that we have had based on Andrew's prior attendance and presentation during public comments at previous meetings. I am also sure that most of you are familiar with our collection of sandbags across our driveway on South River Road, which sadly is now there about 12 months a year. So Andrew and I purchased our house in the summer of 2019. This is our first home together. We instantly fell in love with our new home and the beauty offered by the town of Sewalls Point. As we started settling into our new neighborhood, we met and befriended several of our neighbors, some who are here this evening, and the beauty of Sewalls Point. A week into our new home ownership, our house was flooded. As time went on, many more floods occurred. We started to wonder why the previous owner moved out. After all, nothing was mentioned in the seller's disclosure, and our inspection passed with flying colors. We soon learned that our house was known as a flood house. And following the guidance of Joe Capra, we ordered a topographic survey, only to learn that the surveyors referred to our property as a soup bowl, with the source of floodwaters moving north along South River Road and hitting our driveway and flooding our property even during the lightest of rains. As more time passed, we started to understand the patterns and realized that all along South River Road, from the south end of our property line to the north end, there were breaches everywhere. This is clearly no way to live nor enjoy our home. So Andrew and I are very resilient people. We've gotten involved in our community, made many friends, and consider this our forever home. We are determined to find a solution to this problem and have sought the help of Mike Flaw and his team of landscape architects to design a solution. Mike is here with me this evening to share with the commission his findings and a plan that will solve our problem. It is our goal to utilize our own resources to solve this significant problem, and we're not asking the town for any financial support. By doing so, we will be able to enjoy our home free from the stress that comes with each passing storm. I would now like to turn this over to Mike Flaw, who will share photos of some of the floods, some videos which have been presented in the past, other materials, and evidence of the existing problem, and finally, a design which will substantially lessen the impact to our property. Please note that this is not a solution for the root cause of the problem. It is only a solution that will lessen the impact to our property. We know that the town has recognized the problem and has included a fix in their master drainage plans, but is having trouble obtaining the necessary funding. So thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I don't know if I introduced myself. My name is Katya Lysak, but thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Good evening, and thank you for sharing your time. I'm Mike Flaw. I'm a landscape architect, and the Michelovs are my client. I'm not a civil engineer. I'm a landscape architect, so I can't really speak to the city's stormwater systems. That's more Mr. Capra's forte. I can only speak to my observations on Michelov's property. I think what I observe is not much different than any of you have observed or anybody walking their dog past their property. It's visually lower. Andrew has provided to me, because I haven't stood out there in the rain, but plenty of videos, and it's just kind of obvious from what you can just observe from the existing elevations. Their garage is considerably lower, their house is lower. They sit in a soup bowl. So what we've done, the Michelovs have been agreeable to, at their own cost, to do an awful lot of the mitigation themselves. And part of that, from the drawing that is up on the screen that I think you've received, they're willing to rework their driveway. They're willing to put in a berm up on River Road. They're willing to put in a small retaining wall at the entrance. They're willing to put in the ground some subsurface drainage. And I think all of that will be of tremendous benefit. It just kind of gets to the point of, ideally, how do we evacuate this water from their property in the most efficient way possible? So we'd love to find a remedy that pleases the city and takes care of the problem that would facilitate that conveyance of water efficiently off of their property. We can do, as you've seen in the plans here, a lot of remedies to direct and to navigate that water in a direction, but ultimately, if you're in a soup bowl, there's really nowhere to go. So again, at their expense, they're interested and willing to do swales, berms, subsurface, everything possible. But at some point, we'd love it if there's some kind of remedy that would just take that next step, which would give them some sleep at night, I think, knowing that it's conveyed away. Do you have any particular questions for me? Did you have a chance to look at the plan, or?
Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Sorry you're going through this and have gone through it, but maybe I'd like to hear from town engineer as well.
Yep.
Do I understand correctly that we've done a bunch of work on Mandalay, right? I mean, in the recent history and then also prior to that. So I'm curious what's happening with the water conveyance and how it's changed over those projects. And maybe Joe can talk to it.
Yeah.
With the mayor's approval?
Sure. You want to,
Yeah, if I could. Yes.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yeah, well, I've actually been called up by the people that are here right now in this room. I've also been called by many other residents who live off of Mandalay and other places that are off of River Road. The problem right now is, I've been out there when it was pouring rain, and I saw where it's coming from. I've been out there with one of the people that's here right now, and you can actually see the rain flying off the driveway coming off River Road. These are long driveways, and what's happening, you go directly across and it feeds into another driveway, so the speed of the rain allows the water to collect in these yards. Nothing your two eyes can't help but notice, and that's what's creating the flooding. And I still don't understand how we could put a driveway right across from where the Michelin's driveway is. So once again, you got driveway feeding into driveway, which defeats the purpose. We shouldn't have had the two driveways facing each other. What I feel one of the temporary solutions could be, because one of the homes a couple of homes don't even have COs yet, is to request that they put a deep swale along with a grate over by that driveway to collect, and I want to see it's got to be deep, where you could actually talk maybe maybe a foot and a half where it's there, and that would feed into possibly going, temporarily, like a pipe going under the road and feeding into the current drain that we have there, if that's possible. This would help alleviate, and I noticed there's another home that's directly, it's like the next house over as you're going north on Sewalls Point. It's a white contemporary home that also provides, it floods out the whole middle of the backyards in Mandalay. It goes to the lady's house directly across the street. Her yard becomes a soup bowl. And then it goes and leads on to Dorian's house. His whole yard becomes a flood zone. And it was feeding into the people, to the backyard that's next to Dorian's house. They're flooded to where they have a couple of feet of water in the garage, which is now being closed. Yeah, we'll get to that. And this is, it couldn't be corrected by just putting in deeper swells. There are no swells on River Road. There are no grates on River Road coming out of these driveways. And this is a much cheaper fix right now, at least temporarily, that will help alleviate a lot of this flooding. And I think it's frustrating to the people, and this water goes all the ways down to the very end of Mandalay to the two homes. A lot of it because it'll fly down the road over there, so it's counterproductive to all this money we put in. So if we could somehow allow these deep swales to get built on both sides of River Road, left side, the east side and west side, going all the ways down, and it starts almost as you're heading up toward High Point, because the water also comes not just across the street west, but it's also coming from the south as it's coming from High Point. And so you're getting, the Michelins are getting hit on two ends. And when you see that water coming down, it's like a river, literally on River Road. You can't help but notice. And I've been drenched out there 3 different occasions. I've come out to help the neighbors, and I had to trash 2 pairs of sneakers because the water gets deep and it really does come through pretty heavily. And I just watched these driveways fill up and the properties fill up. And to go out there and spend, 45 minutes to an hour just to watch the rain fill everything. But there's only one way to actually figure these things out, is to physically be there and watch it. And I see where the problem's coming from. And this is something I walked through the problem again, even this past week, to reenact where everything came from with Dorian, and walk through. And, as I did a few weeks back when we had that heavy rain. So, I could keep seeing it over and over, and I saw it a couple of years ago as well. So, but this time I was able to see everything, and I think sooner than later, if we could do this, and if there's, I'll have to ask our engineer, but if there's an inexpensive way to do this with the swales, to dig a deep swale, and maybe even do like a pipe underneath the road, just to feed from one swale to the other swale, and somehow get it into those drains on Mandalay, if that's possible.
Okay, before we go through the commission comments, let's have Dorian come up and speak.
Can I turn this, who am I directing this to? Joe Scott?
No, to the commission.
You address the commission.
Okay, may I turn this so that you can see the different layout?
Oh, we have it on our screen.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm at 8 Mandalay, I've been here since '97, and behind me is a house that has a 3 feet below sea level, a basement, that's being closed in, closing the garage and putting a wall up, and filling in about 4 feet of dirt, so he's no longer gonna have the drainage. If you look at the pictures, you'll see that his area was completely flooded all the time when we have rains. That's why now he's closing the garage off. And in this picture, you can see where all the water is coming from. This is the house west of that house, is northwest of me, coming off River Road in her backyard. And as you can see, it goes through that yard into my backyard. And in the heavy rains, I've had up to about 2 feet until the gentleman behind me had a wall, retaining wall that he had erected, and that collapsed. That's when his basement started flooding, or his garage, so to speak. And now he's closing it off, raising the dirt about 4 feet higher. So that means all that water coming off that one home is going to thinking I was gonna put a berm from the back of his property across to prevent that from happening. I don't know what other solution, because again, his driveway or his garage was the drain. That's where all the water flowed. And now that he's fed up with it, he's closing his garage off and raising the road, and that means the water has no other place to go except my backyard. Then I'll end up with all the water. Years back, in 97 through 2005, I believe, when the house was built, that land was a swamp. All the rain from River Road, my property, all the roads collected to that road. And when the lawyer was there, I explained to him, it's not a good place to build a house. And he said, I know what I'm doing. He had to erect about 30 pylons in the ground, just like a bridge, to hold the house up. So that's where all the water collected. And something's got to be done, because, like I said, he's closing the driveway off, closing his area, and I'm going to have all the water in my backyard. So, that, I guess Joe Capra may have a solution. I don't know. We'll listen to you.
Mr. Capra.
No pressure.
Okay, so, as you know, we've been doing some major stormwater improvement programs, and, you know, we basically look at some of the areas that are actually flooded, and mainly on the east side of the peninsula, and we've been working our way north, fixing those, of course. And as I've told you in the past, basically, we have parts of our solution is to work on the west side and capture some of that water before it flows from west to east, downhill into those low-lying areas. And we've been adding improvements to those areas. I think most of what I observe is a lot of those lots that were empty and not homes on them and so forth did provide some kind of storage out there, as Mr. Doran has observed and so forth. And of course, the water went someplace, and that place was maybe in somebody's cellar, whatever you want to call it, and sometimes it sat on their property and then it was vacant, and so we didn't hear about it. And we've had some where people have been living with it and basically didn't bring it up. But, you know, I've been to Michelo's property, and I've talked about it, and some of the things that they're doing, again, I've kind of recommended that they do, basically provide some kind of storage, okay? So I hate to say that, the three things that we look at in stormwater management, but, you know, there's three items: storage, and that's what we need to do, whether it's a swale, whether it's exfiltration. And again, we unfortunately don't have the land anymore because people have built homes on them. And in your code, the building official does look for storage. He makes sure that they provide an inch of storage, whether they do berms or whether they put swales on their property. So he's looking for that. We looked at upgrading that to maybe 3 inches, okay? Well, to be honest with you, you have all different types of stormwater systems in town. So there's not a one fix for every subdivision, because the subdivisions have different stormwater programs. Some have retention. Most of the ones that we are having problems with have never had any type of retention, i.e. storage. They never had that, so now we have to go back in and put them in there. And we've been, through time, we've had the benefit of those vacant lots providing that storage. Well, those are all filled up. I'm sure you've not seen many vacant lots in South Sewalls Point, right? Throughout the whole town. So we're going to have to provide storage. We did look at, although I don't have a problem with the swale idea, it's a swale idea, but it's good and quite. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't like swales. And I'll just remind you, in 1994, we put swales all along down South Sewalls Point Road. And the water management gave us money for that. And if you go down there now, you will find a lot of them filled in. Over time, people fill them in. They don't like them. They would rather have curb and gutter, and they would like the drainage to go somewhere else. They don't want it on their property, period. So, I mean, we obviously have to come to a balance here, but the storage is the big part, okay? We can provide conveyance pipes, and we have provided conveyance pipes in an inlet by Andrew's house, okay? But my point is just going and directly discharging into that conveyance pipe is going to have some impact downstream, because the fact of the matter is, we can't just keep, the way the permits work now, you can't just put water in the river. You have to treat it. And a way of treatment is basically storage. Basically retention, swales, exfiltration, baffle boxes, all these things you have to do because we have limited land. And so I suspect that our solution, first thing I have to do is, on Mr. Dorian's problem, is to find out, again, besides just observing the flow of water, that's the first start, but then survey it, which is what Andrew did on his property, and basically see which way the water is going. And basically, then from that, determine whether we can put swales, whether we can put exfiltration. We've made those recommendations in the past. We've tried to get grant funds. You know, we unfortunately, we don't get all the grant funds that we apply for. We get a lot of them, but we don't get all that we apply for. So I think one of the things that we are doing, we have a approval to do a stormwater master plan for the town, okay? And what we did is we combined that with the resiliency study which is a planning study that basically addresses stormwater management. And basically DEP is paying you to do that study for the town. So that's something we will go through a process of talking to neighborhoods, talking to POAs, looking at where we have stormwater problems, and then make some recommendations to you, not only in your code criteria, the comp plan things that you've been doing, but the land development regulations that tell you things that should happen when you redevelop a home, whether you redevelop a subdivision, what you do. Basically, the idea is we probably will make recommendations in that area. We will make recommendations to the building official on how we should hold more water. And again, you know, this case here, we will probably make improvements to the roadway drainage system, which will capture some of that water. And like I said, I don't have the problem with the swales, but we had problems with, or even berms, okay? Some of the properties, as you know, on the west side, and where most of this problems is basically because water comes down the driveways. Basically, we need to provide an area where water doesn't directly just come down the driveway and into South River Road. We got to capture it, put it in swales. We've talked about those mechanisms. Mike can help us out in that, basically create some kind of a vegetative area that the water gets diverted to before it gets to the road, okay? And so there's quite a few options. Quite honestly, it may be better that most of those options come through the building permit process, which I don't typically do. I come through fixing your roadways and doing a master stormwater program for those. So, but the fact of the matter is, I think, you know, you can see how much money we're spending on improvements, whether they're exfiltration, pump systems, and land itself. And there's a lack of land. So unfortunately, we're going to be putting stuff underground, and we're going to be asking our residents to store some water on their property. And I don't know how else to do it, because you can't afford, nor can you find enough land here that's already not built on. And I don't think you want to start condemning homes to do this type of stuff. You want to basically work with what we have, work with the communities, and try to basically provide more retention on private properties so that we don't have a problem with neighbors to neighbors flooding each other out. And that's where we're at. And
Can we discuss things with you now?
sure.
You gotta let me ask you a couple questions.
The whole thing is
Okay.
this, studies before a house is built on a piece of land. Aren't there engineers that look and see what's gonna happen after that home is erected and the land is raised? Is that gonna disrupt the flow of the natural flow? That's one. I just want to, another study, we want to make studies. This is off northwest of me. River Road is here, goes into her yard. As you can see, it flows through
You should take this offline.
into his basement. Well, now it's going to be stopped because it's going to be filled in. So all that water is going to collect. And here's all this water. Now, the old town manager had said, oh, it's coming off my roof.
But I would
So
like
you can see
to have a
everything
conversation
is
with you.
flowing this way.
Yeah.
And on the other properties, everything's undermined, all the roots. So the water is definitely coming through. Now, temporary, I'm going to build a berm. I don't know if they're going to okay it, but I have to stop this water because this water is just endless river, it's a river.
And again, I don't want to, first of all, I'd love to do this without a study, folks, but the problem we have is one neighbor says, you know, when I go and ask somebody to, or our building official asks somebody to do these improvements like you're asking for, the first thing he says, no, I'm not flooding, I'm not going to do that. And so we got to come up with some requirements of people to hold the water. And that's not going to be easy because people are going to say, it's not my problem, town fix it. Well, then you have to get more money to figure out how we're going to fix it because we can't get enough grants here, folks. They're not giving out grants for neighborhood little problems. They'll give you a grant if we have a FEMA flood and we can prove that by fixing this, we keep homes, a lot of homes from flooding. They don't just give it for one. Or if they do, you have to raise the house. We've done some of those activities. It's a smorgasbord of solutions, folks. And to be honest with you, he's already going to start doing his own permitting and so forth. Well, we have to look at when he comes into Jack for that permit, right? They got to look at, okay, what else is going to happen to the water when it goes downstream? Is it going to flood his next door neighbor? Because that's most likely what most of it will do. Or he's going to put it into the road, which then I have to figure out how to solve that problem for you, which means more stormwater. So, I mean, we want to solve the problem. I know that you want to fix that. You know, Andrew's been waiting, a couple of years, since 2010. He wants to fix it. He's, you know, and there are solutions there, but remember, we're not stopping the rain. We're basically, it's going to rain.
Wait a second, you can't stop the rain?
Can't stop the rain. Come on. All I can do is find a place for it to go in the short term, and eventually we bleed it off into the river. And it gets treated, so that's what we're going to do.
But if these properties that were put up, before that property was put up, all the drain went that way. Then they foresee, hey, that's a drainage area.
You'd be surprised what is on.
Why are they allowed to be built, knowing that that was a swamp?
Well, you'd be surprised what are in the subdivision plans that are in files versus what's built out there, just so you know. I mean, for example, all of High Point was swells. Do you see swells in any of High Point? I don't see any. I mean, that's what was in the original plan. So.
That's where you build a basement at High Point, 26 feet above sea level. Then you're safe.
Yeah, well, you could be, but you could be, you know, your neighbor could be higher than you and drain onto you. So.
Okay, let's get some comments from the commissioners. How about Commissioner Campo? Why don't you start?
Why don't you go ahead, because you have something.
All right.
Let's try to remember, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic here, but I don't want us to try to be the designers here. You know,
Thank you.
I'm an engineer, but I wouldn't touch stormwater with a 10-foot pole. That's Mr. Capra's deal.
Well, the first thing I would say, we brought this up 3 years ago in the meeting, and at that time, I argued to get more retention of stormwater on the new homes being built. And, you know, we had to wind up compromising. I didn't think it was enough then, and I still don't think it's enough now. What I would like to see, because there's still, I think, 7 homes on River Road that are currently, don't have COs yet. Let's make them retain more water before we give them a CO. Let's make them build big, wide swales. On my property right now, my swale goes as much as 5-6 feet in front of, you know, right between my house and the road, and that retains a lot of water. I mean, we had that massive rain. It pooled. It took about an hour or two for all the water to drain, but it drained. It worked, because that's because of what our engineer designed. The project works. And I also know big, wide swales do work. And the problem is that we have to enforce the swales. That should really be up to the town. You see somebody filling that swale in, fine them. Then we go ahead, and I'm not, like I say, I really feel that's something that somebody seriously would have to pay a fine for, and they would have to, I guess it would be enough for us to cover to redo that swale again, and we'd have to put sod in it, and so that it doesn't just wash dirt. And we need to do this almost immediately with these, especially newer homes. They need to retain more water, and that would alleviate a lot of the problems. And the existing homes that are on River Road, on the west side and the east side, should all have swales. And whether it's hooked to something or not, at least it retains some water. And, you know, it should be about 3 to 5 feet wide, a foot and a half deep. And by doing this, I think you're going to see the severity will disappear almost overnight. And I think it's going to make a big difference. And that's something maybe, I guess at this point, we'd have to talk to as a commission, really sooner than later, make a decision and then tell Jack this is what we need to do, and it would get done. And this would alleviate, I feel, a tremendous, probably 80% of the problem right there. And I do think we need to put, like, the concrete driveways at the end, maybe 6 feet of swell underneath it, so it captures the water, and that would alleviate the quick running water going over there. And the most expensive part would probably be the grate that goes over the driveway. I would have to ask Joe what something like that would cost, but I have no clue. I imagine they'd probably be 800 to 1,000.
Excuse me, sir, but let us finish the comments here first.
But this is something that if we do it sooner than later, and this is something we can also use from the monies that we're collecting right now through building permits, which is really what it should be going toward. The building permit money, a lot of it that we're using, could be used to develop these swales. And as I said before, you fill in the swell, you're going to pay for it. And, you know, plus pay a fine on top of it. I feel that'd be the best solution.
Commissioner Campo?
Okay, well, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think we need to sort it out. This is kind of a complicated situation. I think we need to sort it out like we did with the dock roofs and solve one problem at a time. And the first problem, my hat's off to Tatia and Andrew for, you know, paying a professional like Mike Flaw to come up with a solution. A lot of people just want to, like, you know, wallow in things and call people at different parts of government and complain, but they're actually trying to come up with a solution. So my hat's off to you. And I've been out there a couple of times. My heart goes out to you seeing those sandbags in your driveway. So I think we need to sort this out as far as the immediate problem for Dorian and Tatia and Andrew. And so my first question is there anything in the schematic from Mike Flaw that's contrary to our building codes in order for them to, and we don't have Jack here, who's probably, you know, a very important party to be here. And then once we get through that, then we have to get to the root cause, okay? So we have to sort it out, come up with solutions of each temporary, or I should say not temporary, but isolated to those two homes, and then a more general root cause, and that's the conveyance. And if I remember correctly, as far as the root cause solution, the stormwater plan that I think we were using ADR funds, the American Rescue Funds.
I don't think we used them for.
No, okay, I guess what I'm saying is that we came up with a solution, we had funds for it, it's been 6 months, so what's the timetable of having that plan? That's really, the root cause, I think, will be solved with that plan. So how long does that take, especially, I mean, money is so scarce, but we are able to identify funds. So what's the status of that? What's the timetable of that? And, you know, what's the checks and balance from the manager to the engineer to make sure that we're hitting those milestones? Does that make sense?
Partly, what you approved in January was a vulnerability assessment, which is what I think you're maybe referring to, and that's pretty different from what we're talking about here.
Wasn't a stormwater plan, that was another thing, it was 220,000?
Yeah, you did approve in January to do a stormwater resiliency plan. We're talking about the vulnerability.
Yeah.
We put them together because, quite frankly, but the grant money for that has not come in yet, okay? The DEP is giving you $100,000 to do that study. So that's the reason we haven't put that on and that is a planning study, okay? That's the one thing you did approve, okay? Was to do a vulnerability stormwater master plan, which we haven't done because the money has not become loose. Basically, they haven't sent us a contract for it yet. And they put it off for everybody, the resiliency money in this category, okay? And so now we're going to start seeing that, but I don't know if we're going to see it in July, August, whatever. They keep telling us it's coming, but I haven't seen it yet. And until, when that comes, then I would then start the study, which is going to be several meetings and talking to you. I mean, that's a little different than you wanted to solve just these two problems right now.
No, I'm saying that's why we need to sort it out, because if people just pile on with different problems and my neighbor and the basement and everything else, it just becomes insurmountable. The first part is sorting out the problem. So my question on sorting this out is, first of all, with the isolated situations that we have, is there a problem if Tatia and Andrew were able to implement Mike Flaw's plan? Because at least we can cut them free and say, hey, we give you our blessing. Or is there an issue there? I mean, why are we, why is that even coming before us if it's something that's agreeable? Is it something that the commission needs to vote on to make a change, to make a variance? Or is that something that we can give them their blessing and say, hey, move on with Mike, go ahead and get that done. Now, we still need to have the root cause. The root cause, I think, I'm going to go back to Commissioner Kurzman comments. To have a house under construction that's probably 15 feet higher than River Road, and if you look at that, now they've got the walls set up. I mean, it is like a funnel. All you're missing is like a big arrow saying water flow this way. I mean, it's of course a problem. Why aren't we requiring that homeowner before they get a CO to retain their water? That's what we did down south with the property next to Chuck's house. We said you're not going to get a building permit unless you retain your own water or come up with a water retention plan. So what are we requiring that home under construction to do as far as their own water retention? Because to me, that is part of the root cause, and we have the ability to work with them before the CO is issued. Let's act now, like Dave just said. So we have the isolated situation that I think we might be able to address tonight, and then we have, some other issues that get more to the root cause.
Okay, so let me just go to the first one with the plan for Andrew, okay?
Right.
I think with Mike's plan, he basically is going to submit, first of all, the cement, how he handles this is he develops a plan. And in my recommendation to the plan would be that he either provides, first of all, he figures out the route of the water. That's why they did the survey, okay? Finds out where the water is going to go. He basically figures out where he's going to put berms and where he's going to put swales to hold water. And then basically that water fills up and overflows. And I believe they want to overflow into one of the inlets that we've recently built in Mandalay. That's a solution, okay? I don't have a problem with that as long as he's providing some sort of retention and overflows. Now, he will go and provide that plan. I'm assuming you're going to go through the building department on these. And if he can, I'll be happy to help Jack. But basically, he's going to turn that plan into Jack. Jack's going to look at it and say, okay, this will work. And what Jack will look at is he'll make sure that the water doesn't go directly discharging onto any of the adjacent properties. And he's going to make sure it holds water. And then he's going to make sure it gets into the stormwater system the best he can, okay? So that's that project, okay? Dorian's project will be done, probably handled the same way. He's already talked about berming and swales and so forth. But I don't know, his may be a little more complex because he's got water coming on him from across the, I guess it's not across the street. River.
I would think that the natural flow of water flows this way, it's downhill. So if you somehow build a swale to dump into this system here, which you have all the new sewer lines, and then here, you continue the swale, go on to Margarita. I'm trying to see, Margarita is where? Margarita is
going
up
up
here.
there.
All this water is flowing this way. So if you build a swale and direct the water to Margarita and to Mandalay, that would eliminate the problem that Andrew's having too. You'd just redirecting the water flow.
Well, the problem is everybody's got vegetation that they don't want me to tear up to put a swale in. Plus, they got right-of-way lines, which we don't have a lot of right-of-way. That's one of our problems. We have some, but not a lot. So everything you're suggesting is not a bad idea, but there's always something in the way. And once I get into, swales are an issue, we don't have the right of way sometimes. Second thing is if I put exfiltration pipe, an underground pipe, and store water underground, we have a water main in the way. Okay, so that water main has to be relocated or adjusted for that pipe system. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, what I think you asked, first of all, is what can they do to get at least some relief on the properties? That's one thing. To get relief on the roadway system and capturing some of this water so it doesn't come off the road into these areas, it's going to take the stormwater, it's going to take pipe, it's going to take inlets, it's going to take maybe some gutters, it's going to take capturing that water, and then we can do it. And so that's a different solution. But, I mean, some of the stuff he wants to do, we surely can do through the building permit process. And he just needs to tell us.
What is the cost per yard for a swale average? Is there a number?
That's going to be hard to tell you right now because.
I would think that would be the cheapest.
It is the cheapest, but the fact of the matter is I still have to have the right to put the swale on the property. And so the colonel may not give me the right to put it on his property. I'm not saying he won't.
How far are you going, 3 feet?
Well, like he mentioned, it's probably at least 5 to 6 feet wide. I mean, you can come down and you'd love to have a foot and a half of an area. So, as you know, those yards, they're nice and manicured. They want to maintain them. They want to mow them. They don't want to have something like a Port St. Lucie swale, right? They want something that's nice. So, I mean, so these are things we got to talk about.
Swale is easier to deal with than a curb. If you have a curb,
I'm fine with all that. I'm just trying to tell you the issues we run into, that's all. And we run into them all over. So I'm just saying, I'd be happy to coach some people on some of these, but, I'm not going to, I don't want you to think there's one solution for every.
Of course not.
Problem.
That's a complicated problem, and it's going to take a sophisticated
Yeah,
solution.
but we can work through it.
Can you
with
just
Jack.
answer the question on the home that's under construction? Was there any requirement for them to retain water? Because it's coming right off their elevated property.
And there was at least a requirement for 1 inch, okay?
For 1 inch?
1 inch of water for the overall, was to be retained before it discharged off the property. So I'd have to look at that plan. I didn't, again, that went through the building permit process. I know Jack knows about it. I thought that they were putting some kind of a swale behind the wall and so forth.
Yeah,
I don't know how that water gets captured as it comes down the driveway. I think that's what you're pointing out. It just goes down the driveway, like the arrow that you're talking about. It doesn't get to the swale. So that's what we have to do.
originally he was going to make his driveway go into Mandalay. He was going to loop it up. Now he decided to go straight down. Why, I don't know. But originally, he was designing the driveway to flow into Mandalay to eliminate all that water flow.
Yeah, and what I thought he was going to actually put a bigger area of retention as we got closer to the cul-de-sac of Mandalay, So, again, I had not been following that.
So to the town manager, last question. Has that ship sailed, or do we still have input to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for that home?
I don't believe you do at this time. I can be corrected, but first of all, let me just apologize. The building official is on vacation this week. That's why
okay.
he's not here. So you have requirements embedded in your code already that dictate this one inch of storage. So if you want to do more, you're going to have to amend your ordinances to expand that requirement, is what I believe is the answer to your question. So.
Okay.
That's right, you can enforce what's in your code, those standards. You can also enforce what's in their site plan that, they've committed to building and haven't built, but you can't up the standard after.
Sure.
After the plans have been approved.
Yeah, I didn't know at what stage the property was as far as completion and approvals.
But prior to CO, I would think that you can enforce the existing standard as well as whatever's depicted in the plan.
Hey, Commissioner Fender's been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Very patiently. Hey, Joe, I'm still trying to get my original question answered. I'm just trying to figure out what the distance is from where we're trying to go to what correct me if I'm wrong, I understand to be the storage and treatment train on Mandalay that we put in, a year or two ago. Maybe it's been a couple of years now. And is your concern that we don't have enough storage there? I mean, I feel like we're actually conveying the water down to the treatment train effectively from the Colonel's Corner at the top, all the way down to the water treatment area we just put in, right? So now the question, my real question is, how far is the water do we have to convey from wherever these two issues are to that corner, if that's what it has to be?
I would say, looking at that, there's probably about a direction of between 500 to 1,000 feet that water needs to be diverted. Either it goes to Mandalay or it goes to Margarita.
It's
And
coming
that-
from number 11, 10 and 11, right?
Yeah, so it's got to go
Yeah.
that way, and then the other one for, as far as Mandalay goes, it's actually all the way to, from Delano, from Delano to
Okay, well,
Mandalay.
yeah, but I'm only trying to solve this one
But I'm
problem.
just trying to tell you that there's,
Yeah.
there's quite a distance there, and the residents have tried to do things with a curbing set up and so forth to keep the water in the road from going into their properties, and sometimes it gets off and goes into their side yards. And again, so they're trying to do things, but the fact of the matter is that area, that is a pretty long area. That's probably closer to 1,000 feet there, so.
It doesn't
I
seem,
realize they're building two more.
Excuse me,
Here. No, I just want to.
we're getting off track a little bit here.
Discuss it while we're.
No, I appreciate that.
discuss it outside.
There are two homes being built.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
That's
I'm not
that's
done
right.
yet.
Let's look at-
Let me
I'm
finish a
sorry.
friggin' conversation, Martha. For criminy sakes.
I wanted this to be a good meeting, not.
Then stop interrupting it, please. So you're telling me it's 1,000 feet from 11 to the corner? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm talking about from Delano down to
Yeah, I know, but I get the sense that this diagram that's come before us is really the property that's number 11 across the street from the.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to focus on the problem if we can.
the 11th property can't be any more than 150 feet long. So
But I walk my dog there all the time, and I see the sandbags, and I know where the problem exists, and Commissioner Camp was correct. We do have to circle back around and make sure that we're, the homeowner's that's sending water down, it gets handled, but also, separate from that, the water arrives there however it arrives, and we should fix that problem, but once it's there, I assume, as an engineer, you're going to find a way, or they're going to find a way together to convey that water to the treatment train we've already built, right? The system we have, infrastructure we have in place will contain it, will digest it, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
basically, I gave you three components. One of them's the storage that we need.
Yeah.
And we don't have all the storage we need in the area of River Road area. We have a conveyance system that is sized. If you look at the plan that we have, it has
Down
a
Mandalay.
base, down Mandalay.
I'm
down
not caring,
Margarita.
what I'm saying, if we agree that that's fine, let's
Yeah.
not waste any time there.
I'm just telling you, there's a conveyance system there that'll get you to the foot of
The
the,
only problem we're trying to solve is getting the water from that driveway to that conveyance system, right?
that's right, but we need to provide some storage for that too.
Okay, but
You got conveyance, okay, but you.
there is storage in that treatment train under Mandalay. The perforated pipes, the frogs, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
treatment, there's, first of all, there's conveyance.
Yeah.
There is some storage.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, the idea was that everybody would provide their own storage on their property to a certain extent. That we don't have. and
I
that's what we're-
agree, but that's not what this problem is, right? This problem is a flood of water coming from across the road down into their driveway. And once they get it there, I think they'll solve their problem internally.
No, but you gotta understand, what we're pointing out is that there storage happening on the west side of River Road? That, for those properties, that's the first thing we need to make sure there's enough storage there. And once that we know there's enough storage there, then if there isn't, we have to make sure there's conveyance from
That's the new
there.
property owner's problem, right? The new building that's going on that we need to circle around and
Right.
solve how to store it before it
Yeah.
comes across the road.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like he's pointing out, there's some homes out there that are going to be built. We can look at the stormwater plan they
Yeah.
submitted and make sure they've done some storage. And then we get the conveyance from there to our pipe system in Mandalay or Margarita, either
Okay,
one.
well, that's why I think James' point was correct. There seems to be two problems. One is solve the problem on the west side before it gets there, but once it's there, we have to do Mike's plan or some plan to augment Mike's plan to get that water from there to your Mandalay
Correct,
connector, right?
yeah.
It seems pretty simple.
Okay, Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes. one of the things I'm going to go over, until the CO is issued, the CO has not been issued, at parcels 9 and 10, I guess it would be over there, we can make the amendment and say we need more water retention because of the way the driveway is set up right now. The driveway should never have been put across driveway to driveway. Being it is, we can request that he restore 2 inches instead of 1 inch.
Not if our ordinance doesn't require that.
Well, we gotta if we could change the ordinance prior to getting the CO, we can.
That's,
Am I correct on
what,
that?
engineering on the fly,
There's
or?
a point in the process where the property owner's rights are going to vest in the rules as they were at that time, and so I don't know where they
Can't do
are
that.
in the process, but if they're just prior to CO, they're probably vested in whatever the rules were at the time their plans were approved.
The outside's still under construction. I mean, the whole yard's not together yet.
Understood, but, and I can't tell you exactly what that point is, but at some point in the process, they're entitled to rely on the rules as they were.
Excuse me, please, no, you can't.
During-
No, you can't. Thank you very much.
It's supposed to be open. No,
It is, and you've,
He has built a wall.
Please.
Contain the water.
Please.
2 feet of water and more.
Mr. Gilbert, we've given you plenty of time to talk. Give us a chance to discuss the item, okay?
You guys are leaving things out.
We'll get to the other thing I was going to mention too, the 2 big culprits are the lot there, and if you reduce it, you'll see another house, if you can move, slide it a little bit going north, the other way. There. If you look where it says parcel 1, they move the arrow a little bit over, you see the white roof over to the left, over by the water. That's right there. There's a driveway that goes towards the south side of the house. It goes straight down directly across the street and feeds into, there's a lady that lives directly across the street that feeds into her driveway. That's a very long driveway. You can see the length, how far back that house is set, and it's on a slant. So when that rain comes in, that's the I think that's the biggest problem right there of all the problems we're talking about.
Are you
Yes,
talking about
that
parcel
house.
1? Is
Yeah,
that-
the house with
okay.
the arrow on it. Now, the driveway starts, you could see all the ways right next to the house, goes all the ways through and directly across the street to the house that's number 12. So you're looking, how many feet, and it feeds one to the other, and it goes straight through. And what happens, that water, because of the fierceness that comes through, it basically floods out the yard in number 12, plus the overflow then goes onto Mr. Gilbert's yard, which is number 4. So and it's also flooding out the people that are north over there. Their yard is also filled with water, which would be on the corner of Margarita and Mandalay. They're flooding, and they also get water from, not as bad now because he did some adjustments, but there's another empty lot right next to the big white house over there. And so it's happening, you're getting hit twice with, the other lot's going to be developed probably by the end of the year. They're going to start a house on it. But right now, he cleared it, but he did something to adjust where we're not getting as much dirt and water as it was. He's really been a good neighbor, and he's trying to figure out the flood issues, and he keeps asking, what else can I do? So that's the empty lot at the moment. That's on the other side.
Can I maybe help us wrap up?
I just wanted to ask Commissioner Mayfield, are you still with us, and do you have anything you'd like to add here?
Yes, I am still on this. I know that speaker poster microphone is not great, so I'll keep it short. I feel like the six big items is not great planning beforehand and we're paying the price now. Should we think about an update into the ordinances for any future houses? Is it worth it since we're almost built out? And maybe each individual homeowner, kind of like Nicola or Andrew did, do what they can to protect their own property in the meantime. That's really my takeaway. Oh yes, and the budget process is coming up. We should really look into putting aside the money for fixing individual problems.
Thank you. Commissioner Campo, you'd like to,
Yeah, in order to
wrap
try to wrap up, because we can't build the airplane while we're flying it. We've got to get Jack and Joe and Dan together and come up with something. And Jack's not here, so having this conversation, is not that productive. So I would say, from the commission's perspective on the action that we should take tonight, it would be for the commission to direct staff to have a meeting so that Jack and Joe are more on the same page, to see if there's any ability to influence, maybe in more friendly Sewalls Point type of way, influence rather than a jackhammer, and just to approach that gentleman and say, look, this is the situation, and try to solve things that way. So that would be one action, and the other action might be to direct legal staff to come back with the ordinance regarding water storage, which currently is only 1 inch, and to come up and, like Dave says, let's bolster that. There's so much we can do for what has already been built, but let's take advantage of this issue now and see if there's ways that we can increase that ordinance for future building. So that's kind of what I think should be our general direction, and our well wishes to Tatya and Andrew and Mike on working with Jack. So that might be.
And I agree with you, and like to maybe slightly amend that, Joe, because I'm thinking about, you need to, you can't do this all piecemeal. You need to be able to integrate this into the overall plan. So you really have to figure out, whatever we come up with, how that integrates into the overall resiliency plan. And since you're working on that, maybe you can take a look at this particular area and come back with some recommendations to us. I certainly understand the frustration with the homeowners involved here. And obviously, these are not the only stormwater problems we have in Sewalls Point. We have some major issues that we're taking care of on South Sewalls Point Road in the upcoming phase. So this is going to be a continuation of some of those. And if there's a way to handle this without disrupting everything we're doing, we certainly want to do it as quickly as possible. And I agree with what Commissioner Mayfield says. I think there is there will be some money available in the budget to handle this, because we did pass the increase in taxes last year, and that's about $280,000. I don't want to say it's lying around there, but it hasn't been spent yet, and the original intention was to use that on the Phase 3. I think we're essentially fully funded on Phase 3 based on the grants we have. So there may be some flexibility to use some of that money for associated, and it has to be associated stormwater projects, because that's the way we passed the resolution. So we may have some money there that we could put to this effort as well, as long as we have an overall plan and not just a piecemeal plan for this, these particular 3 properties.
Good plan.
You're not going to do any more design, you promise?
Promise.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
He promised last time.
Go ahead, Dave.
I would also like our new grant writer to go in and maybe take another shot at trying to get us a grant for that as well, because now we'd have matching funds, and it would definitely help, and I think it would give us, we have a lot more, could be a lot more productive this time, and we'll have more money to do something and do it even better than we originally intended to do. I think that I strongly suggest it, and being the problem's as great as it is, and as James said before, we got to get together and do some fact-finding with our engineer and our building department, and we got to get that together, and we should hopefully come back maybe next meeting and see what we could do.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Joe, if next meeting might be a little bit tight. I'm sure you have some other things to do, but if we could certainly get back within a month and kind of give us a little plan of how you want to attack this thing, we'd appreciate it.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Are there any, that brings us to item 13, which is Commission and staff closing comments. Any comments from staff, Mr. Hudson?
I have nothing further this evening.
Okay. Comments from the commission? Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, just a quick question, and maybe introduce this concept for future conversations. I was approached by a local realtor who was asking what our ordinance were related to property sold signs. You know, we have property pending signs, and that's fine because it's pending and hasn't closed, but how long after the sale of a property does the 10 days, okay, good to know. I will pass that along. Because his complaint was that they've been staying there longer, and maybe that's not true, I didn't check, but I'll convey that. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Commissioner Campo?
Yes, I wanted to revisit an issue that came before the commission and initially was kind of unanimous direction, but as we got closer to the actual implementation, took on some friction and passed by a 3-2 vote, and that's the sale of the lot on 7 Heritage. And I've made a couple inquiries because I know that there was some angst about a very large oak tree, and I like for as many of our votes to be unanimous. And even though that vote passed 3-2, I wanted to find a way to allay the fears of the folks that had great care for that tree. And that tree requires a lot of care. If you've driven by it lately, it's just in sad shape, the poor girl. You know, it needs some love. So what I did is I contacted 2 professionals locally, Tom Lucido, a landscape architect, and Dan Braden, a building architect. And I was able to ascertain, you know, roughly that with the proper protections and perhaps some help from Glenn's office, that it would be very possible, and I got this right from the architect today, and I actually held the tape measure. In his opinion, it would be very possible to build a 4,000 square foot home on that home and spare that oak. And spare even, there's another oak that's on the, I guess, east side. And Tom Lucido and I had talked a little bit about some possible, you know, if there was a need for some waivers of setbacks. And the news today, preliminarily, this is, you know, I wanted to do my job as a commissioner, but I don't want to overextend, you know, any authority or anything. But I do think that, you know, since it was a mission that I took on, that if there's a way to, you know, finesse and make it a win-win for everybody. I mean, we're talking about, you know, we need land. Okay, we need STA land, we need water storage, and we're running short on it. How do we do that without a 50% tax increase? We had talked about a land swap, and that made a lot of sense. And as it turns out, you know, we might end up being able to do that land swap for a lot less money. But that does not take care of the problem. The problem is we need money to buy land to have STAs so that the water can be stored and filtered, and we have clean rivers, and the regulators and DEP, you know, are much more generous. If we need to maybe change the sequence, maybe we need to buy the land and then, you know, get the grants. There's a lot of things, but I just wanted to throw out to the commission, and I hope Commissioner Mayfield is still on the line, because I do appreciate the position that everyone is. This is a tree town, and we had an Arbor Day proclamation. I mean, that was like, you know, but if there's a way for us to, you know, use legal, it might need a deed restriction, or it might be some setback waivers, and so that. And I don't quite know what this would entail, but what I'm asking the commission is if they would be willing to spend a little bit of time or get some feedback tonight for us to take a look at selling 7 Heritage with the ability to protect that tree. And because 2 very well-known professionals, I mean, other than Mike Flaw, you know, Tom Lucido is probably he's probably the godfather of landscape architecture. I'd give him that. And for them to say, hey, let's figure out a way to do this. You know, if the town can walk away with, you know, serious six figures for us to buy land that's used for STA, and someone gets to build a house. Someone gets to build a house with a really nice view of a really nice oak tree, and but we would want to do it with some protection. And the protection would be, I don't know what the legalities would be, but something like a deed restriction or quarantining, you know, maybe only selling them a parcel and keeping ownership of that tree. There's a lot of different possibilities. At this point, I wanted to kind of do the due diligence, get it to the point of seeing if we could, as commission, vote 5-0, someone can, you know, build a house, we could save the tree, you know, and sing Kumbaya. I mean, that's nothing that, you know, that's something that I'd like to achieve. But I didn't want to propose that without having some professionals out there. To be able to build a 4,000 square foot single floor home on that lot would make that very marketable, which could raise considerable money, which could be used for land swaps so that we can solve some of these problems. Before I wanted to get too far down the road, I did not want to, you know, exclude the commission, but I thought if it wasn't feasible, what's the sense of spending all the time? So my question to the commissioners would be, or maybe I could just ask Glenn's colleague, if you see, if the mayor would entertain that, do you see something where we could sell the lot with a deed restriction or MLS disclosure that, you know, tree removal permits will not be allowed for these? Now, before saying that, the tree is in some sad shape. I mean, there's one tree which is a nasty stump, and it's sick. I mean, the tree needs some care. It needs to be manicured. And so, you know, moving down the road, you know, there's, they're called staging when you sell a house. That lot, in order to maximize the value, it might need to be staged a little bit. That tree has got some ugliness that could really be dressed up if we could take a large plat and, you know, play like you used to do with, you know, with when you were a kid, you'd like, you know, design homes, or when you used to play house. I'm sorry, I just said it. And you could say, like, you know, we could put a house here, but there's a way for there to be a, you know, a driveway without it being exposed to heritage, a 4,000 square foot home, and possibly a pool. I mean, we've got a lot to work with, but we would want to make sure that we don't get someone reckless in there, that we've done our protection to make sure that they don't go in there and say, it was a good idea, but we're going to take it down anyway. So maybe you can help me with the types of techniques that might be able to use to protect the trees and still be able to liquidate that property.
So offhand, I don't see any problem in the town placing deed restrictions on the sale. It's the owner, town owns the property.
Right.
The more problematic thing, there's different ways it could be done, but I think it could just be a covenant in the conveyance. And mind you, I'm not a real estate specialist, but
Okay.
I have more concern about if there was going to be a need for variances, because generally it's not appropriate for local governments to contract to approve things like variances, so we'd have to be a little more creative about that, or preferably be able to determine that they're not going to need variances. That would require, I think that would be the challenge.
Okay. So would the commission be friendly to having Glenn and his colleague look into possible ways to accomplish the goals with whatever mechanisms might be available? That would be my question.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it was my understanding that they were in the process of doing the zoning change, right?
We stopped that when the land swap kind of fell through, because that was kind of
Why did we stop that? I don't
because,
recall us stopping it, but I'll
well,
take your word
I
for
don't
it.
want to say stop it,
Well,
but we
If
We didn't-
I can add, it's ready to go. I mean, the rezoning, we did hold off on it because of the issue with the Riley property, but it's ready to go. We're ready to redo it, so we can,
okay, I didn't know that.
we can put these on parallel path.
Right,
so.
okay.
I like the idea. It's a great concept. I'm aghast that you could put 4,000 square foot house in that
Yeah, I can't imagine.
third of an
it,
acre
but,
property with that big tree right in the middle of the lot, but okay.
I held the tape and looked at the plat, which was this size today. So, I mean, and maybe it's not 4,000, maybe it ends up being, 3,500 or 3,000 or something.
But we could get
it's worth exploring.
a conceptual plan for marketing purposes.
Right.
So
I
that
think
would
that
certainly
answers
be
the
reasonable.
question, actually, that you're asking, which is a good one. We have a house that was built on, it's being built right now on Miramar and Sewalls Point Road, South Sewalls Point Road. And they actually built the house around the oak tree. That's what required for them to rebuild a house. And that, we protected the tree, and they've actually designed the house with the tree being like a focal point, just exactly what you're saying.
Right, yeah.
The BZA came up with that, and they honored it, and the house is actually looking good right now, and they actually preserved the tree, so it did work out, and I'm sure we could do the same thing with number 7.
Right. I built a home in Castle Hill about 20 years ago, and it's got this gorgeous meandering canopy oak, and we built the pool, and we dug a trench. We treated the roots. I think they were being like massaged, like a Wagyu beef or something. But I was like, are you really, doing this to the root? But what they did to the roots preserved that tree, and it's the most awesome lagoon-looking feeling, exotic, to be in a swimming pool and to preserve that oak. It's a great concept. So could I put you on the spot, Commissioner Mayfield, and see if you had any interest, or?
Yes, I really appreciate the problem-solving thought process and trying to make it work. I am open to that idea. I do think that there are people that would love a house like that. Maybe not as many people, but it could be worth it to save that street. I can't say for sure because the irony, we talk about a land swap, but right now we don't, I know there is the house law, but we don't have any other land in mind. And just because we are so low on land, the size of the tree, there is the tree, and the fact that we're low on land, I can't say I love the idea of giving up basically the only empty, giving up parts we have. But I will give it some thought, and I maybe talk to legal a little bit, and as long as
Okay.
they don't foresee a lot of expense in their research, I'm definitely open to it. I need to think it over, but I do appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Campo.
Sure. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Vice Mayor Kurzman?
I'm good, I just,
Okay. One other thing, I guess we have our July 4th festivities here in town that start at 8:30? I'm trying to refresh my memory.
Yes, if you're volunteering, ideally you'll be here at 8 o'clock, so you can have a quick briefing and get everyone assigned to their job tasks. We ask the residents to start arriving about 8:30. The bike parade leaves at 8:45 sharp. And upon the return from the bike parade, the other festivities begin, including the water slides and field games and snow cones and cotton candy and all that other kind of sugary goodness first thing in the morning.
Thank you very much.
So
Chief.
bring a towel.
Awesome.
All right. Any other comments from the commissioners? We have a motion to adjourn?
motion made.
We're adjourned.